What if Tanjiro never learned sun breathing, but instead became Kokushibo's student and mastered moon breathing? It's a crazy idea, right? But just imagine how much the story would change. Everything we know about Demon Slayer would flip on its head. New battles, unexpected alliances, and a completely different Tanjiro. Let's dive into how this alternate version of the story might start. So, we all know Kokushibo isn't your average demon. He's the Upper Moon One, Muzan's right-hand man, and an absolute powerhouse. But he's also got a past, one that's pretty complicated. He's haunted by the memory of his younger brother, Yoriichi, the guy who created sun breathing and is basically the Demon Slayer equivalent of a living legend. Deep down, Kokushibo has always been obsessed with proving himself, and that's where Tanjiro comes in. In this version of the story, Kokushibo is out on a mission when he hears about a family in the mountains, rumored to have ties to sun breathing. He doesn't think much of it at first, just another job for Muzan, right? But when he arrives, he finds the Kamado family's home in ruins, with Tanjiro and Nezuko barely surviving the massacre. Muzan's already come and gone, leaving behind a blood-soaked nightmare. But here's the twist. Instead of walking away or killing the two of them, Kokushibo pauses. Something catches his attention. It could be Tanjiro's determination. Even after losing his entire family, he's still standing there, shielding Nezuko with everything he has. Or maybe it's how much Tanjiro reminds him of Yoriichi. There's something in his face, his energy, that stirs old memories Kokushibo can't ignore. Whatever it is, he decides not to kill them. Instead, he steps in and saves them. But Kokushibo doesn't do anything without a reason. He's not exactly the rescue mission type. He sees potential in Tanjiro, a spark that he could shape into something extraordinary. So instead of Giyu stumbling upon Tanjiro and Nezuko, it's Kokushibo who finds them and offers him a deal. He tells Tanjiro that he can give him the strength to protect Nezuko and avenge his family, but it's going to come at a cost. Tanjiro, desperate and unsure of what else to do, accepts, and just like that, the story veers off in a totally new direction. Tanjiro doesn't meet Urokudaki, he doesn't learn water breathing, or train with the Demon Slayer Corps right away. Instead, he's taken under Kokushibo's wing, entering a world that's brutal, demanding, and full of uncertainty. The way Kokushibo teaches moon breathing would also be a game changer. Moon breathing isn't smooth or gentle like water breathing. It's aggressive, sharp, and absolutely devastating. For someone like Tanjiro, who's naturally empathetic and soft-spoken, this would be a huge adjustment. But here's the thing about Tanjiro, he doesn't quit. Kokushibo could knock him down 100 times, and Tanjiro would get back up 101 times. That relentless determination is what Kokushibo would respect most about him, even if he didn't show it outright. In Kokushibo's own way, he'd push Tanjiro harder because he sees the potential to rival his brother Yoriichi, the greatest swordsman in history. That resemblance to Yoriichi would drive Kokushibo to make Tanjiro stronger than he's ever been. Now, Tanjiro's fighting style would be completely different in this timeline. Forget the fluid, graceful movements of water breathing. Under Kokushibo, Tanjiro's swordsmanship would become precise, calculated, and terrifyingly powerful. He'd learn how to overwhelm his opponents with sheer force and sharp crescent-shaped strikes. Kokushibo would drill strategy into Tanjiro's head, how to read his opponent, anticipate their moves, and strike with lethal precision. Kokushibo would challenge Tanjiro mentally and emotionally too. Moon breathing is a style born from darkness, and that would rub up against Tanjiro's natural compassion and humanity. Over time, Tanjiro might start questioning himself, whether his power is being used for the right reasons, or if he's becoming too much like the demons he's fighting. For the final selection, Tanjiro would step into that spooky, demon-filled forest, looking nothing like the uncertain, wide-eyed boy we saw in the original story. Kokushibo's training would have hardened him, so he wouldn't hesitate when the demons appeared. They'd charge at him, thinking he's an easy target, and he'd cut them down with precision. One strike, gone. It would probably feel effortless, but only because Kokushibo drilled those moves into him day after day. But it wouldn't be all smooth sailing. This is the final selection after all. Tanjiro might run into a demon that's more than just your average brute. A demon that senses the moon breathing technique and realizes it's something connected to the upper moons. This could lead to a more intense fight, where Tanjiro has to really push himself. Moon breathing is all about power and sharp, overwhelming attacks, so he'd have to pace himself to avoid burning out too quickly. By the end, Tanjiro would have not just survived the final selection, he'd dominate it. Now, Tanjiro's first mission wouldn't be some simple job to take out a lesser demon. With this level of skill, his reputation would already start spreading, and that means Muzan would hear about him. You can bet Muzan wouldn't ignore a rising demon slayer using a technique that looks suspiciously like moon breathing. He'd probably send a powerful demon to test the waters and see what's going on. So we can imagine Tanjiro facing a demon that's way beyond what a newbie should be dealing with, maybe even a lower moon. Nezuko would step in, and if Kokushibo helped her control her demon powers, she'd be way more effective in combat, matching Tanjiro's intensity as they fought side by side. side. Tanjiro, with his calculated attacks, would keep the demon on the defensive, while Nezuko would unleash raw power. When Tanjiro wins, and he would win, it'd be a statement. Muzan would hear about the defeat of his demon and start piecing things together. A kid using moon breathing? Suspicious. This would put a target on Tanjiro's back, making him a priority for Muzan's forces. The Mugen Train arc would have a dramatic turn. Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke still meet up with Rengoku, who's as cheerful and inspiring as ever. They board the train, and Enmu traps them in his dream spell just like in the original. The dream world still tug at their hearts, but here, Tanjiro's mental discipline, thanks to Kokushibo's brutal training, helps him break free a lot faster. He takes charge, waking the others and diving straight into battle. When it comes to fighting Enmu in his grotesque train form, Tanjiro's moon breathing completely changes the game. He doesn't waste as much time figuring out how to fight this massive demon. His precision cuts and deadly techniques go straight for Enmu's weak points, making the battle smoother and more efficient. The fight feels less desperate compared to the original story, but then Akaza shows up, and things get serious. Akaza immediately senses something strange about Tanjiro's fighting style. He recognizes the moon breathing and realizes it's Kokushibo's. This throws him off for a moment, but he's also thrilled by the challenge. Tanjiro joins Rengoku in the fight against Akaza, and their teamwork creates some incredible moments. Tanjiro's sharp, calculated strikes complement Rengoku's fiery, overwhelming power perfectly. They manage to push Akaza harder than he's ever been pushed before, but Akaza is still an upper moon, and his insane regeneration abilities make it nearly impossible to take him down. In the end, Rengoku still sacrifices himself, delivering an emotional speech to Tanjiro that leaves him both devastated and inspired. Akaza retreats as the sun rises, but not before reporting to Muzan about Tanjiro's moon breathing. The Entertainment District arc kicks off with Tengen bringing Tanjiro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke along to investigate the disappearance of his wives. Tanjiro, now much more skilled with moon breathing, is a much more intimidating fighter. When he confronts Daki, his attacks are so precise and devastating that she quickly realizes she's outmatched. Things get wild when Gyutaro enters the fight. His blood demon art is even deadlier than Daki's techniques, and the siblings' coordination keeps Tanjiro and his friends on their toes. But the real shocker happens when Kokushibo shows up. Muzan, already suspicious of Kokushibo, sends him to help Gyutaro and Daki, but it's clear this is a test of loyalty. When Kokushibo arrives, Tanjiro is stunned. His mentor being on the battlefield is something he wasn't prepared for. Kokushibo, torn between his connection to Tanjiro and his orders from Muzan, doesn't attack directly, but instead creates a distraction. This distraction proves fatal. Tengen is outmatched, trying to hold off Gyutaro alone, and he sacrifices himself to give Tanjiro and the others a chance. In the end, Tanjiro and his friends manage to decapitate both Gyutaro and Daki at the same time, securing a hard-fought victory. But they leave the district without Tengen, and that loss stays with them. When Tanjiro heads to the Swordsmith village, things start out lighthearted. He's there to get his sword fixed after the battle, and meeting Haga Nezuka is as hilarious as ever. But the calm doesn't last. Two upper moons, Gyoko and Hantengu, launch a devastating attack on the village, and the fight pushes everyone to their limits. Tanjiro's moon breathing makes him a powerful force on the battlefield, but without the sun breathing technique, he struggles to deal decisive damage against Hantengu's regenerating clones. It's a brutal fight, and Tanjiro has to rely heavily on Mitsuri and Muichiro to pull through. Meanwhile, Muzan has finally had enough of Kokushibo. Convinced of his betrayal, Muzan confronts him directly. The battle between them is short but intense, with Kokushibo standing no chance against Muzan's overwhelming power. Kokushibo's death leaves a void, and it hits Tanjiro hard when he learns about it. Without his mentor, he feels both abandoned and determined to keep pushing forward. Back at Swordsmith Village, the turning point comes when Nezuko reveals her immunity to sunlight. This discovery is a beacon of hope for the Demon Slayer Corps, but it also makes Muzan even more desperate. He now knows Nezuko is the key to achieving his ultimate goal, and he shifts all his focus toward capturing her. The battle ends with Gyoko and Hantengu defeated, but it's a bittersweet victory. The loss of Kokushibo and the growing threat of Muzan loom over everyone. The final battle against Muzan could go in so many interesting directions. First off, without sun breathing, things are immediately tougher. Muzan is ridiculously strong, and sun breathing is such a key weapon in the original story. So maybe the Demon Slayers go all in on a strategy to just stall him until sunrise. Everyone, Giyu, Sanemi, Mitsuri, and even Zenitsu and Inosuke would have to team up, hitting Muzan from every single angle. And here's where things would get wild. Nezuko. She's immune to sunlight, right? Maybe she shows up in the middle of the fight and becomes the turning point. What if she uses her own body to hold Muzan down just as the sun rises? It'd be so intense, but it could also mean she sacrifices herself. Tanjiro seeing his sister literally burn away while ensuring Muzan is destroyed. It's heartbreaking, but also feels like something she'd do out of love for her brother and humanity. Then there's the really dark possibility ability. Muzan passes his powers to Tanjiro right before he dies, turning him into the new Demon King. That'd be insane. Without Kanao, or maybe anyone, around to administer the cure, Tanjiro might be stuck as a demon. But knowing Tanjiro, he'd probably try to resist the urge to harm humans. On the flip side, maybe Muzan is defeated, but Tanjiro loses so much in the process. Nezuko, his friends, his sense of purpose, that he decides to leave the Demon Slayer Corps altogether. I could see him taking a path similar to Kokushibo's, but in a way that's more selfless. Like he becomes this wandering swordsman who protects people quietly, never sticking around long enough to get recognition. He'd carry Kokushibo's moon-breathing legacy with him, but in a way that redeems it. Or, and this is the happy ending option, Nezuko survives, and after everything, the Kamado siblings get to rebuild their lives. Maybe they go back to their home in the mountains, trying to find some sense of peace. Tanjiro might even use what he learned from Kokushibo to create a new style of breathing, a mix of moon and sun breathing, that he teaches to future Demon Slayers. He'd be like this legendary teacher who changes the Demon Slayer world forever. No matter how you spin it, Tanjiro's moon breathing training would add such a cool twist to the story, but it also brings more challenges. Would he be remembered as a hero, a tragic figure, or maybe even both? It's wild to think about all the ways this could go, but one thing's for sure, it would be unforgettable. Well, that's it for this video. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. In the meantime, you can check out this other cool video that's appearing on your screen. Click on it to see.